Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in this week's First Time Home Buying with Brian. This week I wanted to go over my 10 commandments for buying a home. So these are things to keep in mind while you're out there searching. Number one is thou shalt not change jobs. We've had this before where people have come in under one job, switched jobs in the middle of the process, and now their loan can't go through because the way that's paid is differently, or they've gone from a W-2 job to a 1099 private contractor, and at that point we have to use 2 years of history. So number one, just don't change your jobs when you're in the process. Stay with your job. If you get an offer for a new one, a lot of times call me first and we can kind of walk through it because there's some things that we need to go over before you make that jump. Number two, thou shalt not buy a new vehicle. Everybody's heard the stories before where people have showed up to closing day in a brand new car. That really can change everything as far as the loan goes, even after it's approved. So until you sign on the dotted line, get the keys, and the loan's funded, I would not recommend going buying a new car or a truck or a van, because if it affects the loan, you might be sleeping in the new vehicle. So you want to make sure that you just avoid that during the process. Number three is thou shalt not use credit cards or let the accounts fall behind. Even though we've already pulled the credit and that's what we go off, at any point during the whole process, the underwriter can re-pull your credit. And if now you've maxed out your cards and your scores have dropped, that could be bad news for the loan approval. So don't go crazy on with credit cards, and make sure you're making your payments on time. Because the worst thing is to get in underwriting and then have the underwriter pull it, and now your score doesn't even qualify for the program that you were originally applying for. So we have to restructure the loan. It could cause delays. So avoid using credit cards if you can during the process. Number four, thou shalt not spend money you have set aside for closing. This has happened quite a bit to me in the past. I had clients that have spent money that they initially had set aside for a down payment or for the closing costs. They book a trip, or they just go out and buy stuff that they don't necessarily need until after closing, which brings me down to number five. Thou shalt not omit debts or liabilities from your application. So when we pull your credit, it's going to pull everything that's being reported to the credit bureaus. If you are trying to avoid telling us about a different debt that you pay monthly that's not necessarily on your credit card or on your credit report, this is more than likely it's a buy here, pay here kind of car finance or anything like that. A lot of times your bank statements don't lie. They're going to find out. So it's better to be honest up front rather than go into the underwriting process and then have us to add that, because again, that could affect the results of the loan. You could go from an approval to a denial. Thou shalt not buy furniture or appliances before closing. I get asked this all the time. The house I'm buying doesn't have a refrigerator. Is it okay for me to finance one now? No, wait till you move in. I know it's kind of a pain in the butt, but just like the car and the credit cards and everything else, this could affect your debt to income ratio number and put you from qualifying to not qualifying. So now you have a new refrigerator, you just don't have a house to put it in. So wait till you close, and at that point you can buy new couches and furniture and whatever you want. Number seven, thou shalt not run thy credit. So this one's big, real big. So do not go apply for new credit cards. Don't go apply for installment loans again for your car, for any of that. You just don't want to run your credit when you're in the loan process. Every inquiry that you add potentially drop your score. So adding excessive inquiries on your credit during the loan process, again, they can pull at any point. If your score drops, that's bad news again. So just avoid running your credit if you can during this process. Thou shalt not make any large deposits. This has to do with that mattress money or that fund money that a lot of people have under the bed or in a cupboard. That you're like, this is to buy a house. If it's a large pile of cash, or if you're transferring money from other accounts, that's a no-no. Whenever they see large deposits on your actual bank statements, now the underwriter is going to want documentation. So we have to source those funds, find out where they came from, and basically give them a paper trail so they understand how you came about this money. And if it's cash, it's very, very, very difficult to source. Trust me on this one. You just do not want to make a whole lot of movement in your accounts during the loan process, because every time you move funds from one account to another, we got to be able to show where the funds came from. And so it just opens up more boxes for the underwriter to take a look at. Number 9, thou shalt not change banks. So if you've supplied me bank statements for Wells Fargo, but the interest rate over at Bank of America is a little bit higher, and you're during the process and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna jump over to Bank of America. That's a no-no. What the underwriter wants to see is a 2-month history of your bank accounts. So they're gonna take 2 months. So if you're in a brand new account, we don't have 2 months history of it to show where the fund, what the funds are like. Because if you open a brand new one, we're only able to do 30 days, and we have to wait until you get that 60 days worth of bank statements in order to final approve the loan. And number 10, thou shalt not co-sign for anybody for any reason. During the loan process, adding a co-signer on your friends or your family's vehicle or house or whatever it is, now that debt is becoming part of your responsibility. So that goes towards your debt to income numbers, towards your purchasing power. Again, that could affect the loan from approval to denial. So you want to make sure, at least during the loan process, not to co-sign for anybody. But again, these are just while you're during the loan, kind of think about this before you decide you're going to start shopping. These are things to kind of avoid. So if you have any questions, as always, feel free to shoot me a text, send me an email, comment on my post here. I'll be more than happy to answer anything for y'all. Again, my goal this year is to get as many of y'all into houses as I can. I look forward to helping you guys, and I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.